right, guys, now we're on to a hip hinge finally. Remember, I want to do one knee hinge, I want to do one hip hinge. There's a lot of variations you could do for hip hinge. You could do an RDL, you could do a stiff-legged deadlift, you can do that with dumbbells or a barbell. One of the ones I really like is the good morning. A good morning with a traditional bar. Sometimes I get a lot of lumbar involved in the movement. So I like the SSB bar, and the variation that I like with the SSB bar is to bring your hands forward. Again, like with the seated hamstring curl, getting more of a stretch in the hamstring. I'm gonna try and bring my hands forward, and it really gives me a really focused effect on my hamstring. We'll do two types today. This one's probably more for accessory work for building hamstrings, and we're gonna do one that's more specific to say mimicking a deadlift, which would be a great accessory that you can actually build and make it one of your max effort lifts that to potentially transfer over to a deadlift, because we don't like to deadlift all the time, is going to be this one that Matt's going to show us. So I'll start with the SSB bar, hands extended to get the hamstring for the hip hinge. And just like you're going to do an RDL, but you're going to try and keep your hands extended out, and that really hits your hamstrings hard.
Dan, what's the difference in that? Tell them why, like pushing your hands out versus keeping them tucked.
It's really, like I talked about in the knee hinge movement, it's kind of like you're trying to touch your toes. When you reach and you extend your rib cage, you're just going to be able to concentrate on hitting your hamstring better than if you're in this position here. A lot of times, almost immediately, if my hands are down and I start to hip hinge here, I feel it in my lumbar almost immediately. But if I push my hands forward and push my butt back, I'm feeling it in my hamstrings instead. So it's just a matter of where do you feel the movement. One of my favorite hip hinge movements. All right, Matt, talk us through this one.
So on this one,
what's this one called?
What kind of bar is that? I kind of cut my teeth in the late 90s, early 2000s. Going up, I drove to the West Side twice a week, and every Monday I think we did good mornings that I can remember. And basically, it's always stuck with me. What I always found is my good morning goes up, so does my deadlift. But particularly concentric good mornings, the key I see with good mornings, it's like any exercise in the gym. At the end of the day, like if you're a competitive powerlifter, which a lot of the people watching at home are going to be, your task is to get the biggest deadlift. So if you become a good morning king and your deadlift doesn't go up, then it's really not going to transfer. So the biggest things I see is people squat their good mornings. So kind of get in here with this concentric good morning. I'll let Jason start off. We like to go heavy on these. We go up pretty much 1 to 3 rep maxes. Put your hands down real quick, Jay. You can see he's right about where he would be as a deadlift. So a lot of times I think people have the bar too high, and then the other thing they do is they shoot under and they squat it. So which is another exercise, but it's not a good morning. So what Jason's gonna do is really pull from his hips, drive through. So it's like an RDL. I think this is great for the mid-shin part of the deadlift. Puts a ton of stress on the hamstrings and the low back in a good way.
And you can have the stimulus to fatigue ratio conversation again here. Now we're doing mostly concentric movement, which is what a deadlift is. It's concentric. There's no eccentric loading in that. And since your squats are hip hinges and have eccentric load, there's no need replicating that in your accessory work. We use this with John again for fatigue. We want to minimize fatigue so he has more energy, what we call limited physical capital. You gotta be careful where you invest it so that you have more energy and you create the fatigue in areas that are gonna be more beneficial to your major lifts or to your sport. And then in here, try and maximize, get as much loading as you can with minimal fatigue, and that's what this concentric movement does. And so we intentionally don't slowly set the weight down. We load up some chains and we're just crashing into the chains. And it's of no consequence to us because we're really only focused on the concentric portion of the movement.
The other thing is, you get like stance that we do with athletes, you got to make it yours. So like, if we're talking to John, for me, I only think about it as a deadlift. For him, it might be shooting a hip hinge. We've even done these with the split stance. For John, where he's in here like this, because again, that's going to be more specific to what he's trying to do. But the biggest thing of all training, and we'll talk about this later, is it's just got to transfer. So there's no one right way. Like A lot of guys like good mornings. A lot of guys like stiff leg deadlifts. Stiff leg deadlifts from a deficit. It's the one that works best for you.
Yeah, and there's really no such thing as functional training. We're in the gym to build strength, and even more specifically speed strength, and hopefully not take away from, as mentioned earlier, your actual sport, so that you can invest more of your time into doing that sport, which is functional. Do your sport.
I would also say, as a powerlifter, there's something nice about when if everybody's missed a deadlift, and there's no worse feeling when your deadlift's down. I like to use this as I'm coming back because it's a confidence builder. If you have a tough day on a good morning, it's like, well, it's a good morning. But if you do good, you feel like I'm getting stronger. And with the concentric loading, I always feel like not only do I feel stronger quickly. Whereas deadlift, everybody's different. A heavy deadlift, you talked about this, it kind of wiped you out for a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's why at the end of my career I talked about how I would squat one week and deadlift the next, and then squat the next week. So I was only squatting twice a month and deadlifting twice a month. But I was using accessories like this to help build both. They're both hip hinges anyhow, so I wasn't trying to repeat that effort in any one given week.
Yeah, because I think that for some people, the deadlift really wipes them out.
For sure.